No, you have to come to order.
I said as soon as we're in session.
Okay, welcome to the school board meeting for, what is it, March 5th, 2014. We'll do the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, review and revision of agenda, nothing?
Okay, unless there's any other revisions that anybody wants to suggest?
Okay. Buzzing right along. Going to summary of non-public actions from February 19. Mr. Miller made a motion to approve the non-public minutes of January 22nd, 2014 as written. Mr. Barker seconded. The motion carried 3-0-1 with Mrs. DeLeva abstaining. Mr. Miller made a motion to approve the non-public minutes of February 8th, 2014 as written. Mr. Barker seconded. The motion carried 4-0-0. Mr. Miller made a motion to accept the nomination of Natalia, how do you say her last name? Amperez, as full-time Spanish teacher at CHS at a prorated salary of $14,141.13 for the 2013-14 school year. Mrs. DeLeva seconded, and the motion carried 4-0-0. Mr. Miller made a motion to deny the grievance. Mr. Bork seconded. The motion carried 4-0-0.
Clearly, I was in a hurry to get out. All the motions.
Okay, so now we're at presentation and recognition, and we have Leah how do you say your last name?
Stagnone?
Stagnone. I was going to say Stagnoni and make it Italian, but...
Oh, so I am on the agenda?
You are?
Yeah,
Well,
Youth and Government U.S. Senate.
Oh,
Certificate
So
of
Leah-
Achievement.
cool.
We have a space here for you as well.
Surprise.
In recognition of your honor as being selected, I believe the first Campbell student ever to be selected as the youth representative for that Senate program. So congratulations. Well done. We know that you will not sit passively on your hands, that you will be active and working and thinking, and I am sure talking and having input. And we congratulate you and wish you well.
Thank you very much.
Leah's going to solve
Leave on
gridlock in a week.
Saturday.
That's it. She's going down there next week.
Okay, so up next is a proposal for community yard sale. The requesting organization is the CHS Boosters Club.
Good evening. My name is Kara Gannon, and I'm one of the co-presidents or co-president of the Booster Club. And we are requesting to have a community yard sale on May 10th to help with our fundraising. We have some initiatives that we do here at Campbell. As you know, we do give scholarships out to graduating senior athletes, and we provide varsity sweatshirts after athletes have completed 2 varsity seasons. So we would like to have permission to have this yard sale.
Do you have a
Any
rain date?
questions? We do not have a rain date, and actually, we may have to come back to you again. We do have the date as May 10th. There is a track meet that day, so we're not sure how many teams are invited, and Coach Patterson wasn't sure yet, so.
The approval from the board has to occur when a new type of fundraiser is initiated. So what the board is approving is essentially the approach as opposed to the actual date.
Oh,
And once it's
fabulous.
approved, then all
Okay.
you have to do basically is
Let
next
me know
year,
the date.
let us know that you're going to do it again and advertise, and Barbara signs off in the form. and away you go.
Is this being done with the other booster clubs? Wrestling, ice hockey?
Well,
What other ones do we have?
the Campbell Booster Club kind of is the umbrella and represents all athletes at Campbell High School. Wrestling has its own booster club because they're self-funded.
Yeah.
So we really aren't connected to them unless some volunteers are on both clubs, but that's it. We represent all athletes at Campbell wrestling, football, golf, swimming, gymnastics, everyone. So we're kind of the bigger entity, and we are the ones that has the funding available if we have the fundraisers to offer the scholarships for graduating seniors and sweatshirts and any kind of facility updates if, those are needed.
While you have the mic and a potential audience, do you want to share with folks information about how stuff will be dropped off or when?
Sure. So the
And
things will be dropped
I'm going to write this down too.
off.
I got a load of stuff.
Good. We are hoping to be able to begin it at 7 a.m. and people will come in and rent a spot for $10 and then a table for an additional $10, unless they would like to donate all of the earnings that they made that day from the yard sale. They will come in and they'll have their spot, and we'll go through the day. What we're trying to work out right now is the end of the day and what happens to everything afterwards. We do have a couple of calls into Salvation Army, Goodwill, some of the nonprofits to come and collect everything that's left over, because we don't want it.
So
left
can
in
you
the parking
donate
lot.
potential items and just say whatever they,
Yes.
and so do they have to man that themselves, or it's just
No,
comes
we'll have
over and-
volunteers there and perhaps have some areas set up that's, set just for that.
Trying to get a car in a garage.
I think we all are.
No hazardous goods, though.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve the community yard sale fundraiser.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those against? Okay, so we're 4-0-0.
Fabulous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If I can just say something, just from recent experience as far as trying to get rid of household goods and things like that, as far as with Salvation Army and those type of organizations, it's really, really difficult for them to coordinate with you or to even accept them. You might want to check like with Goodwill, and you'd have to probably drop them off. Otherwise, I would check with like local churches, that type of thing. They might have a better need for it.
Okay.
But Salvation Army, most of those organizations, I mean, they want like large furniture, brand new or something for you to deliver it, type of thing.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so do we have any correspondence?
I think there was at least one email from Mr. Durant
It's recent.
on Common Core. Can't seem to get into email.
Well, I'm having difficulty with my this.
Actually, I think it might have been 2 emails since the last meeting.
It's not liking anything I'm doing tonight.
Yeah, I can't get into the webmail. Well, that's all the correspondence I had.
Okay. Whoops. Anybody else?
I have correspondence from a parent, but it's about a student situation and not appropriate for
Okay.
distribution.
All right, then we'll go on to draft minutes from 2/19.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against? Abstain. So,
Aye.
oh, you're an abstain, that's right. So it's 3-0-1. Okay, community forum? No? No one wants to talk to us? All right. Moving right along, guys.
I like it.
Let's go to superintendent's comments. Is he going to be brief?
No, that's when you say, Trish, you're going to be brief, not are you going to be brief.
We started
I can't make a motion to adjourn. So that's off the table. Just wanted to let folks know that we will have recognition in 2 weeks of the accomplishment of the Campbell High School robotics team. So in the meeting of the 19th, we will be inviting Mr. Childs and invitations to the members of the team. We will have individual recognition for them, and we'll also have an update on how they did at UNH. They'll be there this Thursday, Friday. And I'm not sure, I've heard various versions. I'm not sure if they're guaranteed to go to the Boston Regional or not. They are? So, they changed the format this year. Last year, Verizon was the regional competition, and the structure, I had a nice conversation with Mr. Kretchen today about why they're structured the way they did this year, and it's to try and retain more first-year schools who, if they're forced to go to a regional, I mean, it's convenient for us because the regional is always at Verizon. If you're from Rhode Island or Connecticut, having the regional in, so now there's another layer in there. But congratulations, I was able to make it for a while for an hour and a half on Friday afternoon, watch the last match, which they won. And come in just as they were trying to. In the match just before that, they had a malfunction, had to take some pieces off, replace a burned out motor, and jury rig it to try and get it into a match, which they won quite nicely. So,
What does the robot have to do? Because I know it's different every year.
Yeah.
it's actually quite interesting. This year is similar to last year. Last year they were flinging frisbees. And this year there's a rather large, it looks like a medicine ball, but it's lighter and a little bit larger. And you score points by passing from one teammate to another, one alliance member, or passing over the bar in the middle, or scoring. And there are lots of different mechanisms for scoring. And we're hoping that we can get the robot here in 2 weeks. But we scored, I think, one and had two like off by this much. It's really interesting because almost everybody had some sort of projection device to scores. And ours was actually a hammer that goes up and then swings around and smacks the ball. Dead center. I mean, it was perfect repetition each time, and it's a difference of like that much between scoring 3 points, which would have instead of the one. But it was fabulous to see. It's a great environment if you get a chance to go.
I think it's supposed to be on display next Tuesday on voting day, so I imagine they'll private set up
Yeah,
in
they were.
the corner of
They've
the
been
gym.
shooting balls all
Yeah,
over the
they'll
place.
be their little corner of the gym.
It's,
Now, how many students are involved in that this year?
I'm thinking it's about 14 on the list, 14,
No,
15.
there's 28
Wow.
on the list.
It's a lot of folks, and they do a lot of different things. We had one of the members, when I first got there, one of the team members was actually being interviewed by two of the judges who also happened to be in engineering faculty at two different universities. And it was an interesting conversation about where the student was going and what they were doing and how much money were they giving you here and there, and well, you know. And it was so fabulous. I talked to the one of the parents later. He just conducted himself so well. It was just a thrill to see this very talented kid literally being recruited on the floor, and conduct himself in such a mature, fabulous fashion, listening with great interest. So he's academically very good with the engineering piece, very good. And it's just fabulous to see somebody in that situation in the midst of, the machine breakdown and the repair and all the other stuff, have the composure to sit there and have this great conversation with two people who have interest in his future. And, it was very rewarding for me.
I asked because I saw a video a couple years ago, they had to put the ball in the hoop, I think.
Mhm.
And there was video online of a team that they got ahead, and they had a thing on their robot that covered the hoop. Nobody else could score. Don't know if it's legal, but it was hilarious. They look, the crowd cheers, they make it, they make like two, and the robot goes, thunk, and puts a thing over top of the hoop, like two prongs over the hoop. Game over.
Yeah.
Now,
It was one of
Inventive
those things-
thinking.
As long as they don't say you can't do it, I think it's
Yeah.
pretty much.
Doesn't say you can't play defense.
That's true, because they did have, they, remember, last year they had to climb also. They had
Yeah,
points
you
for
get points at
climbing.
the end for climbing and being up off
They
the-
had some of the machines could play defensive, could do things to stop other
Yeah.
machines.
Last year, the robot they just, it's interesting because it's announced you've got 6 weeks to build it. And so you've got hundreds of teams in the country all trying to decide what will work well for them individually and also make them a good partner in an alliance. Because what happens is after the round robin, the number of people who go first get to pick their alliance mates. And so last year at Verizon, at the regional, we were like 11th out of 40 or 50, and everybody's going, well, I wonder if this team's going to pick us, and this team's, and nobody did. And there were probably, by my count, somewhere around 4 or 5 or 6 robots who function almost exactly in the same defensive mode as our 3323, but we had by far a better record than any of them, and we didn't get picked. And this year, I think we had a lot more offensive capability. And got picked up. And, you know, the further they got in the competition, the better they did, so, great stuff.
Good.
But it's just interesting to see, when you get the rules of the competition, you know, with 6 weeks, people go away and do their thing, and it's quite a ways in before they actually see what other people designed. And then, so you get an early competition or two, and either your model works, but the number of styles is usually pretty limited. They're usually very similar, some that are extremely offensive, some that are extremely defensive, and some that are sort of multimodal. And ours, I would argue, was more of a multimodal. It had some offensive capability, and actually did very well at times, but also had a lot of mobility. And, you know, so it was interesting to see. Anybody has a chance to go see it, it's well, it just is an event. It's well worth it, but to see the quality of engineering. And I have to say, I don't think you could have had a more student-driven, independent group. I was sitting with Mr. Childs watching, waiting in between while they were doing the repairs, and there were no adults supervising. There was nobody telling anybody what to do. Yeah, Mr. Childs had complete confidence that the students would fix it and come back and report, and they did. And he asked what they did, and they explained what they did and why, and that everything was fine, and that was it. And, I mean, he occasionally went to check on them. But he was not trying to micromanage. He understood the learning opportunity that was there for them and did not take away from that. It truly was a student-run event, and that's not always the case for all the teams. So.
Very good. Did you want to do this calendar?
Yes. This is a slight revision from the prior calendar. And the changes in the May and June dates, I am unavailable on May 7th. And so there used to be the 7th, the 21st, and then skip 2 weeks to the 11th and the 25th. If we move the May dates back a week to the 14th and 28th, then we meet April 23rd, then the break week, and 1 more week. And then from then on, every second week in May and June. Finishing essentially on the same
Does that interfere
day.
with any of the events at CHS?
I don't think so. A lot of times they schedule their events after we posted our
Okay,
meetings.
all right.
So,
Last year, we tried to do that, and we moved things, and then their events got moved,
Then their
and
events
then conflicted with us. So Michelle did try and contact, but
Okay, so do we have to approve these changes, or just,
I think it's just if
Yes.
it's our date changes, I don't think
Yeah.
it matters though.
okay.
As long as it's not going to affect school or students, I think.
typically it's approved by the board as a vote, just because their dates established have to be published and that sort of thing. So the approval dates from the existing one are,
I'll make a motion to approve the new calendar.
Do I have okay, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Abstain? 400. Okay, so now school board comments.
Well, Trish, this is your last meeting, and I'm very sad to see you go.
Are you sure, John?
I am.
You're gonna
I
miss
am.
me?
I am. You were, you added a lot to the conversations and stuff, and I think you were a very effective school board member. And I think that, your experience will be missed.
Thank you, John.
Hopefully, in a few years, you'll get that business
never
rolling
know.
well, and
I
you can
may
come
be back to
on,
haunt you.
know?
And then you'll
Not
regret
haunt
saying
me.
all these nice
Not
things
haunt
to
me.
me.
Never haunt me.
I would just second John's comments. It's, you dug in and didn't always see eye to eye, but you always had rationale for your position, and instead of just being against everything, you had a reason, which is all you can ever ask is someone to come, that's read the material and understands exactly what they're voting for or voting against, and I think you did a great job, and please don't show up and speak every week at community input.
I don't have time. That was the case.
That will be haunting us.
It has been nice getting to know you guys, getting to know the town, the people that come to these meetings. It's really been a great adventure, and I will miss it. I will.
Trish, I'll just say, it's hard to believe it's already been a year. I mean, since I've been on board and been with you. And the one thing that's been good watching you is definitely, you always seem to be the one who's taking the other side. Whether or not it needs to be taken or not, but I mean, you're taking it for the argument and to get clarification on a lot of things, so. That I
That role
appreciate.
passes to you now, since you're now going to be a sophomore.
Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta
I have
take
to
my
be the
place,
conservative
Brian.
now?
You can be. Or just take the other
The other
side, just to
side.
take the other side.
And you need to move to Cutler Road.
It kind of is a prerequisite, isn't it?
Trish would rent you a room.
Yeah.
Sounds good. It'll be cheap,
Don't expect a discount.
but you might get fed well. I like to cook.
So am I.
Okay. Moving on to, what is this, LMS course presentation?
Yes. Thank you. I think this will work. Okay. So we are presenting tonight the Lit Tech class, which is the new course that started this year at LMS. I'll just start with a few things. First, I want to recognize Jody Corbett. Jody is the teacher of the class and has done a tremendous amount of work, not only this year as we've implemented the class, but backing up into last spring. I mean, you'll recall conversations we had at the board level and the support that you lent us from the beginning on this, and then the work over the late spring and summer, really getting into the nitty-gritty of exactly what the course is going to look like. Of course, with this course, the name of the course is Lit with Tech, Literacy with Technology, and our focus, and what you're going to see tonight, the theme of the presentation really is that this is first a literacy course, but it is the integrated technology and that bringing together of the literacy and the technology that really makes this a special course, a unique course, I would say. If you look around the town, I don't think there's a lot of middle school courses like this, and I would say we're really on the cutting edge and sort of on the side of the curve we really want to be on when we talk about 21st century learners and where we want to head with career and college readiness. So you'll see that sort of as a theme tonight, but it really is a literacy course first, and then it's in the environment of a computer lab where students are every day on computers using the technology, and I'll show you some samples of things students have actually done this year in the course. So just going back a little bit, when we looked at the revised standards, particularly around ELA, English Language Arts, and also looking at the technology standards, and all of those things that come together for middle school kids as they go through their 4 years at the middle school and then culminate in their 8th grade year, which is when we offer this course, we really wanted this to be something where the technology was integrated. What I've seen is in our school, we have the literacy skills course, which is an earlier in the middle school course, And that, I mean, that's a worthwhile course. It's valuable. Kids are learning presentation skills. They're learning how to navigate the internet, how to choose different sites for reliability and things like that. But really the rubber meets the road when they're required to use those skills, and those skills are integrated into a purpose. And that really is how we live our lives, right? We all have technology at our fingertips now, but really it is you know, what is the purpose, and what is the end to that technology means. So in my report, there's a link to this presentation. I'm going to start with the tab, and across the top are a number of tabs. The first one's this Wordle, which just gives you a little bit of an overview of some of the different themes that we're looking at and when we talk about Lit with technology. I'm going to start with this Prezi, and basically what this will do is, again, summarize what I've talked about here. Again, it's an 8th grade course. All of our 8th graders take this course, and Dr. Cochran.
Could you clarify for us what Prezi is?
Yes, a Prezi is like PowerPoint. It is a presentation program, I guess, that allows us to do a number of, you'll see things with presentation, but it is it is something students are using in the class, and
it's, if I remember correctly, it's also a free download.
It is
And
free.
it does
Yeah.
have some features that I would consider to be enhancements above and beyond PowerPoint in a lot of ways. And as technology is always on the move, when I saw the early draft of this and it was in Prezi, I started to feel old. So I actually did some research on Prezi this week so that Jody wouldn't, baffle me too much when she talks.
I clicked on the link to the website. What's the access key? It's asking for an access key.
Littech.
Littech, L-I-T-T-E-C-H. Okay, so in terms of just the general structure of how the course runs, it is offered every day to students. As students go through the middle school, we have 2 ELA blocks in grades 5, 6, and 7. One is a language arts block, one is a reading block. There's a lot of overlap between the two. And within the content area of ELA, there's a lot of strands between writing, reading, speech language, and all those items that overlap. But that's how the setup is in grades 5, 6, and 7. So in grade 8, we have a language arts course, which Jessica Rett teaches, and then Jody teaches the literacy with technology course. It is in a desktop lab, or a thin client lab, and that was set up over the summer, and students came in day one to new technology in the classroom there. And if you're familiar with the layout of our school, we're right next to, this lab is actually right next to the computer lab. That's always been our computer lab in the school. That's room 4, and then this one's right next door to that. Okay, so. So just again, the foundation. Again, we're trying to bring together the revised standards around ELA, which when we talk about, you hear a lot about the 21st century learner and college career readiness. Really, what are we looking at? We're looking at students who are able to not just retain information, not just collect information and facts in their brains, but able to apply that information into a context. And we're using technology as the tool for that, for a lot of that application. In the Common Core standards and then in our revised standards, we're looking for critical thinking, we're looking for a transfer of knowledge, being able to apply that in different contexts, and that's where a lot of what they're doing in this course really comes to life. So what's the motivation for the students? And I think that's pretty obvious, using technology as learning, collaboration, and a communication tool, inquiry, which we'll get into in a bit, real-world connection, and an opportunity to create and share. Jump in if you have questions as I go. Jody, you too. What are the key skills? So communication, collaboration. We have and again, we'll get into this a little bit later, but really the reading comprehension and the literacy piece, but a lot of that focusing on nonfiction text. I'll talk a little bit later about one of the focus areas is really students collecting evidence to build arguments. And as they go up through the middle school, argument writing becomes a bigger chunk of writing. The total amount of writing students are doing, a heavy requirement is in that argument writing piece. So I'll talk a little bit more of that, and you'll see some samples of that. Expressing those ideas in written form, both text and project-based, and being a contributing member to an online learning community. And I'll show you a piece of technology that Jody's using to do that, to bring them into an online learning community in an appropriate way, which is important. And sort of to that end is the online class forum. I'll show you a sample of what this looks like. Sometimes this is a little scary at first, I think, for parents, that kids are online in a forum setting. There's a lot of there are a lot of rules around this and how that works, and it is done in class and it's monitored closely, but assignments are posted online. Students engage in online class environments similar to higher learning online class environment where there's message boards and they can comment on work and offer feedback. They have access to their virtual classroom 24/7. And another component is discussion. Students, they read from a variety of online sources and text complexities. I mentioned they formulate arguments, they back up their arguments with text support and evidence, and they read others' arguments and respond to them. We'll see some samples of that too. It's a project-based course. Most, if not all of their work, day to day, culminates in some sort of project. Typically, and so they do a lot of communicating via the online Blackboard. They do a lot of activities day to day, but most of it culminates into bigger projects. They work alone as well as with peers. They research, read, analyze, synthesize information. They collaborate, create, present, share information. Okay, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time reading the standards to you, but just to give you a bird's eye view of how we arrive at the focus for this course. The ELA umbrella is very broad. As I mentioned, there's writing, there's literature, there's a lot of different texts within the ELA curriculum area. There's speaking, listening, viewing. And so between the language arts class and the lit tech class, there's been a lot of work and conversation around what happens where and when. And we are in early March, and this is still a work in progress as we go through the year. But I've been really happy, and Jody's seen a lot of progress in what students are showing us now and providing evidence of now versus where they were back in the fall. So we're definitely seeing a continuum in the right direction on that. But you can see that I used the word evidence a few times. That's an overarching theme in a lot of the projects. Not just offering opinion on things, which 8th graders love to do, but really understanding what evidence looks like and what reliable evidence.
So when the 8th graders, this is the first year for this class?
Yeah.
So when the 8th graders came in and they started this, how, what was how far apart were the most experienced computer users to the non-computer users? I mean, did you have such a large gap on what, on students' abilities that there was, that you had to catch students up? Did other students feel like they were too far behind and stuff like that?
There was a gap, but a lot of students this age, they feel comfortable with technology even if they don't know exactly how to use it. And even though we use the technology as a tool, I'm not really teaching the technology, so we had definitely opportunities for them to kind of grow in their skills. I do have students who've never had a computer class who are navigating this very well.
let's see. Okay, so the next tab is Schoology. I'm going to actually put Jody on the spot here for just a second. Jody, if you could just give an overview of what Schoology is. I pronounced that correctly?
Schoology.
Schoology. Schoology. And just sort of how they're using that on a day-to-day assignment by assignment basis.
It's a learning management system. It is an online forum similar to Blackboard, Edmodo. It's organized into classes, so every class has a forum. We can post announcements, we have discussions. There is a feature where I can post assessments. I don't do that often, but they can submit assignments. There's a Dropbox. I can grade papers and hand them back to them with comments there. They can communicate with one another. We use the discussion feature a lot. That's where they do a lot of their responding and writing arguments. I found that beneficial because they can read each other's arguments and be able to respond to those. They learn from each other in that environment as well. They can also message me and I can message them, but they cannot message each other privately. But it is a closed system. They can't communicate with others outside of their own class.
And I think we have some samples under the discussion.
Yeah.
Okay, so, again, we have some of the standards listed there, but across the top, if you're on this, there are some excerpts from that discussion board that we mentioned, from October to November to December to January. And it is interesting to, again, we don't have to analyze this right now, but if you really take a look at the content in the excerpts, you definitely see more depth as time goes on. And it also gives you a flavor for some of the different topics that students are investigating, talking about, thinking about in the class. So I'll just read a couple of these. In this discussion, students were given a link for a local news story to read. In addition to that link, they were also given a copy of our own district's wellness policy to review. After reading the article and reviewing our own wellness policy, students were asked to craft an argument reflecting their thoughts regarding this issue. Some responses are on the right. This is from the online classroom where students' discussions stayed live for a week. Once initial responses were posted, students read their classmates' posts and responded to those posts as well. And I'll just read the one there for January. In this discussion, students were given information from both sides of the climate change debate to read. After reading the information, students were asked to do some additional research of their own on the issue and synthesize the information at their disposal. Some responses are on the right. This is taken from the online classroom where the discussion stayed live for a week. Once initial responses were posted, students read their classmates' posts and responded to those posts. And while we're on the samples, I'm going to click over the last tab on the right there, project assignments. And we have a few different tabs there on the top. And the first one, for this project, this student created an infographic for the multimedia option final project in phys ed. So there was an interdisciplinary crossover between phys ed and lit tech. In class, we spent time researching and drafting projects. Students also worked on revision and editing before handing these projects to satisfy the final project requirement in the PE class. And I'm not sure, can I make that?
And you can kind of scroll through, it looks like it's too big for the frame.
So I don't know if you have that on your computers, but then an Excel document that involved comparing colleges and doing research around that. Just a Microsoft Publisher document. After learning about plagiarism and ways to avoid it, students created posters to share what they've learned about the topic. For this assignment, students used Publisher, a program with which many of them were unfamiliar. So in some cases, there is a little bit of background work that needs to happen, to John's question. Then a couple of Word documents. There's also the more traditional papers, and as I mentioned, with the argument writing, that's a big emphasis in our building right now is writing position papers, being able to, again, provide evidence to defend an argument. For this assignment, students had to read several different articles, take a position, respond to a question about the role of schools in student health. I believe the last one was another sample along the same lines. So just in general, we could have given you more samples and more information, but just really just a quick overview of where we are after about a half a year of the class. It's been really worthwhile, really valuable, not only because of the use of the technology as a means to an end, but it's really nice to see kids going another level with their thinking. Our kids are on this technology. They're pulling internet sites about everything under the sun. And a lot of times, they develop opinions on things, but it's not necessarily, they're not held accountable for, okay, is this evidence that you have, is it reliable? Have you really checked it? Is it? And so really some of that work that's happening in the class. In a minute, when I get to my report, I'm actually going to be presenting. We had PERC today, and the PERC committee approved a book that they're going to be using in this class. So there's, as I said, it is a literacy class, and there is a component of reading that goes along with that. But it's, again, a part of this argument writing, position paper writing piece, and using some of the evidence from the book for a project. So, any questions? Or Jody, did you have anything else you wanted to?
Could I start?
Sure.
Jody, you taught grade 8 English language arts before?
Grade 7.
7th grade? So you taught middle school English language arts, and now you taught this class at grade 8. What do you think this class offers, if anything, that's different from or that helps improve students' reading, writing, research, presentation skills, getting them ready to be successful in high school? So what is it that's different about this course that isn't just double English language arts? And part 2 of that is, if you had the course to do all over again, what would you do different and why?
This course is different because the technology brings a really big difference. I think in the past, to use a computer lab was a little bit of a hassle, to be quite honest. It's not always available, you're reeling it down, batteries die, it's a constant issue. So there, it's there right away. That's one big difference. The other difference is we haven't done any any fiction reading. And that's a really big difference for me. I miss it, but I see the value in students being able to read a wide variety of nonfiction materials. The other thing about this course is I've been able to focus a lot on how do you provide evidence for your thoughts and your ideas and what you believe. And I'm not saying that we didn't do that before, but because this is, the focus is on nonfiction, I think there's more of an opportunity to kind of try to hone those skills with them, and they're able to practice that very frequently. How would I do it differently if I did it again? I don't know that I've been doing it long enough to decide that yet. But at this point, it's still evolving.
When I look at the examples, I see multiple citations, even for relatively short pieces. I see for grade 8 level, relatively well-formulated arguments, a variety of levels of support for argumentation, and some differences in skill level. But the major pieces to me, the work that I'm seeing, the major pieces that we want them to have heading into high school appear to be there in January of grade 8. Are there, if you could think of that whole argumentation piece and nonfiction writing piece and research piece, what would be the one or two things that you think will really help these kids at high school that they might not have or wouldn't have gotten without this course, besides the technology?
I just don't think that they've had the quantity of opportunities to do this up to this point. I think when they have a whole class that spans the spectrum of ELA over the course of the year, they don't have that as frequently. So when they get to high school, I don't think they're as prepared because they don't remember that they've done it. Because they aren't practiced at it, they're not well versed in it. And I'm hoping that by doing these kinds of activities over and over and over again, that by the time they get to high school, they will have that as a skill that maybe they didn't have. I don't want to say perfected, but it wasn't well practiced.
Okay, thank you.
The other piece is the students that are in the language arts class are still getting more of that traditional, I guess you could, literature experience, where there is still that classroom novel, or we have our lit series that they use in that class. So, between the two areas, they are getting a lot of text, both fiction and nonfiction.
Is there any cost to us using the service?
No, these are all Prezi and I cannot say that word. Schoology. Are not. There's no charge for those.
And what if a parent objects to the privacy policy? What's the option for their student?
Have we had that happen?
I'm sorry, I missed.
What if a parent objects to the privacy policy?
You mean if they didn't want to do that?
If they say, I'm not going to allow my student to sign up based on the privacy policy, I don't want my 13 or 14-year-old, their information on that website that can be disclosed under the terms of the privacy policy.
There are two options. Number one, I can give parent access, so they have full access to their own child's information, if that is a comfort level. If that would help. The other option is everything that I do on there can be printed out or put in a separate file. The student does not have to participate on the online forum if they don't choose to do so.
Just a question I would ask, I don't think you can answer it. There's no mention of copyright or ownership of items that are posted, which typically means once you post it, it's not yours anymore.
Public domain.
It becomes public domain versus a service that you retain copyright for information that you post. It might be something to look at if you want to expand the course or move as to how do they deal with content. They make all kinds of claims that they don't monitor it, but that doesn't mean that they don't take something that somebody posted and use it in advertising or marketing materials, which somebody may or may not object to.
How is it that parents know that their student is going to be, do parents have to sign in for this? How do the parents know that this is going to occur?
Well, I sent home a syllabus at the beginning of the year that had this information in it. I have had parent emails and have some parents who are on the site, who have their own username and password, who are linked to their child's account and can monitor things. And I haven't had any complaints or...
Okay, so there's not an actual form that goes home to the parents giving permission for their student to be involved in it?
We have our authorized use policy, which is generic, but it establishes, if parents don't want students to have access to technology, then the place really, the place that already exists for them to express that is in the authorized use policy. Authorized use policy has to be signed off by the parents.
At the beginning of each year?
I don't know if we
But
have to do them annually or not.
To Tricia's point, their privacy policy says you must obtain a verifiable parental consent form from all parents whose children will be accessing the system.
You know, as a parent, I would prefer to have it each each item put in front of me to sign off on, because I might decide on one thing and not another, or, you know, sometimes it's, at the beginning of a school year, you get inundated with
Yes.
boatloads of material, and you're just signing your name on everything. So, I don't know, it would be my preference for parents to have that option as it comes.
And we just, I know we had the conversation with Julie when she was here about some of the testing. We just have to be careful as we open up online to students that we're doing what we have to do to use the site, and we're doing what's right for the student, not because it's something somebody in the district wants to do. And to make sure we follow all the rules, because you could rapidly run afoul of a variety of situations without crossing all your Ts and dotting all your Is.
And it certainly doesn't hurt to have an extra set of eyes, other parents, you know, checking it out and seeing what they come up with as problems or.
Is this something that all 8th grade students are taking? So this is part of their schedule and curriculum as they get it at the beginning of the year. So, you know, parents should be engaged. When do they get their schedules for their students for 8th grade?
Day one.
No, but do they get it during the summer? Do they have an idea of what
The
they're?
kids get them the first day.
It may be that we need to do the same thing as the high school, as you guys are formulating the schedules. It may be something that needs to be released during the summer to the students, to the parents, so that, you know, you don't want to have the issue on day one. I think this is probably something that can be easily handled through communication with the parents and a change of processes, that schedules are going out. I mean, you basically have, well, I don't know, I'm assuming there, but I'm believing that you don't wait until day one to have the schedules completed for where everybody's going to be. And hopefully, you know, teachers have a workshop in the last week, so you have them, I would hope, done before those days. So if there is a time, I mean, sending it out in an email to the parents and stuff, that here's your schedule for your son or your daughter, begins the process of again, I mean, the responsibility falls on the parents, and I think the school can only do so much. I think we educate the parents of what we're going to have. We send out the proper notifications, but if a parent has a specific issue, it's our responsibility, not the school boards or the schools, to hold their hands to get to that process. I mean, it really needs to fall on the parents, and if they don't understand it, then they need to ask the questions. I mean, we can't, you know, there's 1,500 kids, 1,500 families. There has to be some responsibility. I mean, I don't think the class is taking students in areas where they don't need to be. I think it's teaching them some very good skills, but if there is a desire by a parent, then they need to step up and express that, and then we need to follow our processes that allow that. But if we have to send a note home to every parent every time a kid's going to touch a computer, nothing's going to get done.
Well, no, John, but if you're going to send students off to an external site that we don't control, that's a completely different story than I'm going to set up stuff online here that kids are accessing on the district network that's completely controlled by the district. Going out.
I would imagine the safeguards of the server and that Kyle has allows him to see if anybody's gone somewhere where they shouldn't be, or to control that process.
I'm not arguing they're going somewhere where they shouldn't be. I'm just, I'm taking Trish's position.
Wow.
I'm going to have to learn to do this since she won't be here. That there may be somebody that, just like someone can object to a book that we're using in a class, somebody may object to doing this online. I don't know why. I wouldn't necessarily do it, but we just have to make sure that we do that. And this is, to me, this is no different than moving a book. Did this go through perchance?
No, what we asked the board last year was for approval to offer the course, and we'd come back with a full curriculum piece. And this is part of what happened today. Now we're also hoping next year will be the doubling up of the grade 7 math. We're hoping to have that curriculum to perk and come to the board this year as well. I mean, it's obviously preferable, instead of getting permission to create and pilot as something as a work in progress and then bring back, clearly it's preferable to, you know, bring the curriculum to the board ahead of time. Time didn't allow it last year. I just wanted to respond to the questions though. I think those are really good questions and comments, and I think that one of the things that we have to think about moving forward is how we can use the technology to close the circle between teacher, student, school, and parent. I was at GMS last year at an event in the gym, and parents were so aware of what their kids are doing on a day-to-day basis. They know what's happening in each and every subject. They know where at every point in the day. And there just tends to be an assumption that you'll know less about where your child is and what they're doing. I mean, I had 3 kids of my own, and of course, what happened today at school? Nothing. And with technology now, like we had a first presentation of our student information systems yesterday, and Jody actually sits on our SIS committee, and looked at some of the things available for the parent portal, the ability to go on and look at your child's assignments that are coming up, read the syllabus of the courses, and be much more informed and aware. And so as technology will allow the ability to extend students' day by engaging them, 24/7 in software like this, it also holds, I think if we do it well, the opportunity to reacquaint parents with exactly what their kids are doing and why. And it offers, I think, an ability to really go the other direction. That is, make what's happening in school and the learning that's going on more visible to parents, and make them be back in a situation where they have access to many of the same resources. And because engaging learning can happen outside school, it now becomes more visible to parents. And that, I think, is a very good thing, because it can tighten the communication. The other thing is looking at better and more frequent means of communication. And 2 weeks from tonight, I remember a while back, the board asked me to come back in March and give a sort of a vision of where we might be going with technology. So that presentation is scheduled 2 weeks out. And the parent portal and the student information functionality, and that, communication among the student, the teacher, the school, and the parents is a big piece of that, I think. So,
Tom, don't get me wrong, I think it's a great idea, and I think it's
No, I understand. the
beautiful to
questions.
bring that in. I just want to make sure that we're understanding what we're asking parents to sign up for their kids. I could just envision somebody objecting, and as long as we
I think,
set up-
we're in some uncharted territories here. This is something that we've, and I think we're going to continue to move in those directions over the next few years. So these are definitely questions we're going to have to be able to answer, and,
well, for example, as long as they're inside our firewall, then we know that the servers are CIPA compliant and they're being screened and monitored appropriately. But if students are going home and doing work at home that's school-related, they can be doing something inappropriate. So do we need to be more proactive in communicating to parents the importance of being aware of where their child is more proactive in that way? And I know the middle school, if I'm not mistaken, had scheduled something, Mr. Leclerc, about internet safety, websites, social media, that sort of piece from a safety perspective. I can't remember if it was middle school or high school that did it, but
I mean, the community piece, it was at the high school.
Was it at the high school? But invitations went out to the middle school folks as well.
Yeah.
So what do we need to do at this point? Do we need to vote on this, or what is, this is just a presentation?
I believe that some stuff went to PERC today, and the next time that Julie is here for the curriculum report, she'll be bringing
Then we'll
stuff
be-
forward for the board to look at
Okay.
then.
All
This
right.
was just a
review.
we promised the board last year, when it was approved, that we would come back and present what the course is about. We'd identified that it was going to be based on the Common Core standards for informational text reading and writing, research and presentations. That would also be mapped to the ISTE, the International Society for Technology and Education, their student standards. And that, I noticed, was in one of the roots that was in that presentation, those standards. So I think I'm very pleased with the fidelity to the vision that was presented and the quality of the work. I think we still have, some work to go on the curriculum side, but I do want to thank Jody for her leadership and the work that she's put into this. I think if this course is as successful as I would like it to be and hope it will be, a lot of that will go to all of the work that you've done this year. So thank you very much.
Okay. All right, so moving on to our next part of the agenda is principal reports. So we have GMS up first,
All right, and I lost my screen.
of course.
Don't talk long enough that your battery dies.
Yeah, I put the whole meeting in a tailspin.
You won't be able to give your report.
Yeah. Skip it, you got it.
Okay. So, I've written things out longhand, but would it be helpful if I kind of summarize some of the things that we are doing? I'll take that approach unless you ask for more detail. So, March 11th, Teacher Workshop Day, next Tuesday. I wanted to talk a bit about that. It's going to be a little bit different because all of the special ed staff, the teachers and the related service providers are going to be meeting district-wide with Devin Bandowski. So who we will have in the building primarily are the classroom teachers, specialist teachers, and I'm meeting with them tomorrow because they'll have a slightly different activity that day. But we're going to focus at the classroom level on reviewing the results of the kneecap testing and also the January Ames Web testing at both the student, the class, and the grade level in order to find out more about what our students know and what we may need to do differently or what is working really well. So that is going to be the focus of our morning. And then in the afternoon, we're continuing to work on the Performance Assessment Network project. Their guidelines were that at least one of the 3 tasks that we bring forward should be about mathematics. So I've met with that committee yesterday, and we looked at some sample, some people came up with some ideas for a math performance assessment, and we'll be continue working on that. The next meeting is in April. But we have to bring back to the larger faculty the second writing task, which was opinion writing, which Tom just talked about the importance of that, and we actually participate in that piece of the curriculum even at the elementary level. We had our second annual Math and Reading Winter Carnival on the last Wednesday of February before vacation. My apologies for putting it on a school board night. That was an oversight. We do try to avoid those nights. It also snowed that night between 3:15 and about 5:15. So we were scurrying to get the plowing done, which we did. The custodial staff turned to and helped make it safe. We did have a bus shuttle, again, which really helped get everybody into the school who attended. Attendance was down a bit from last year, but it was still, I think, good and a valuable thing to do. Tournament of Readers ended. We had 43 fourth graders, which is nearly half the class, who participated in the Tournament of Readers. They're in 5-person teams, and they have to each read in this year, 4 to 6 books. This year it was 6, so it's a lot of extra reading. The 2 final teams who went to the final before the other students and the faculty who were able to attend were the Flipping Pages, Matthew Hart, Kylie York, Corinne Chu, Catherine Quenneville, and Matthew Blanchette, and the Super Duper Readers, Jack Cruzan, Jaden Corbeil, Brienne Duhamel, Caitlin Ferris, and David Costco. So it was a lively competition, but in the end, the Flipping Pages were announced the winners, and the other team was the runner-ups. So it was an exciting afternoon. Unfortunately, I missed some of it because I had a meeting I had to attend at the same moment. I went to the beginning and then had to leave. But we talked earlier about the Fishing Cats Reading Challenge. Our students were challenged with a little presentation back in December, I believe, to read 5 books apiece. And This goal is to have 100% participation. Those students need to mail their forms in directly, and they're due this Friday, the 14th of March. I want to mention that the chorus will go to the NHMEA Large Group Festival on Saturday, March 15th, and compete at Goffstown. Also, the chorus and fourth grade recorder ensemble will be coming to the high school on the 18th for rehearsal, and then, of course, we have the district chorus concert on the 18th and the instrumental concert on the 20th of March. The quality performance assessment team, just again, we're shifting our focus to mathematics for the third project, and we meet again, I believe the date is April 4th. I did want to thank some teachers in the school who have done above and beyond in order to make these things happen. Chris Tate, Paula Cullen-Kent, Mary Lou Saxton, Susan Jositis, Maura McCullough-Hine, and Judy Peterson all worked on Tournament of Readers and made that a success. Connie Farrow was the guest question reader at the finals on the 18th. And many of those same people, Chris Tate, Sandy Johnstone also, Sue Jositis, Maura McCullough-Hine, and Judy Peterson also led the effort to organize the Math and Reading Winter Carnival. Naturally, all teachers participated, and at the end of this report, there's a list of all the activities in case you were not able to attend and wanted to see the things that the teachers had put together. I wanted to thank the PTO for their continued support of school events and efforts. Most recently, they helped organize baskets for raffles at the Winter Carnival. And also, thanks to Stacy Leary, I'll talk more about this in a moment, but for helping to organize the Kids Vote on March 11th. So upcoming events and other issues. We have Star Lab, which is an inflatable, portable planetarium, allowing the kids to see the Milky Way and a planetarium experience right in the school. And that's coming on the 21st of March. The fourth grade will have presentations by the New Hampshire History Museum in March and April. I actually got to see the first one going to school yesterday in one of the classrooms, and it really talked about what school was like in the 19th century, and it was kind of interesting. They had artifacts, slates, Apple IIe's, things like that. No, that's a joke. They didn't have Apple IIe's, but they did have slates, however. And they had things that were common. They had something, I forget what it was called, a horn board, where paper was so scarce, paper was applied to a board and then covered with animal horn to protect it. That became something that students would use year after year to read, but they didn't have a lot of books, apparently. Anyhow, it was an interesting presentation. Third quarter grades, amazing as that seems, grades close on April 4th, so we have about 4 weeks left. I just wanted parents to keep that in mind as they're working with their students to get all those projects done. Bingo night for the PTO is coming up Friday on March 14th at 6 p.m. That's a fundraiser, and it's also lots of fun. And for planning ahead, we did set the date for the spelling bee to be Wednesday, June 4th, and have begun planning between the guidance departments and the administrators, 4th to 5th grade visitation and transition to the middle school for June as well. Items of note, the student council recently sold GMS sweatshirts, and they made more than $900 for their student activity fund. And then they support charities that they choose with the money that they have raised. The student council is helping to organize the Kids Vote for next week. We don't have any school song or chant, so the students were challenged, the fourth graders, to come up with something that could be used as kind of a rallying cry at GMS. We had more than 30 submissions from fourth graders. We narrowed it down to 9, I believe, and according to the guidelines that we had in mind. And then the student council met today and chose 4, which will be on a ballot. They're going to go to classrooms and tell the students about them with the hope that when they go to the polls next week, they will all get to vote on a school chant or cheer. Also, we're resurrecting a fundraiser that's been done in the past, which is Art to Remember. Heidi Miller is doing this. You may recall this from years past, but students submit a 2-dimensional artwork for duplication on a wide variety of products, which parents can buy. So the artwork gets put on a mug or something like that. And the money raised will go to support the World Wildlife Fund, and specifically to adopt a tiger, which is our school mascot and an endangered species. And for the kindergarten students, they plan to adopt a polar bear because they're studying that ecosystem, the North Pole. The PTO sponsored GMS Day at the Manchester Monarchs on February 23rd, and this is Read Across America Week. So we have 5 different days. Today was Wacky Wednesday. Tomorrow, I believe, is Tiger Day. Everyone is invited to wear orange and black to show our tiger spirit. There's a lot of reading of Dr. Seuss going on, and Ms. Pavel Tamel every morning reads an excerpt from one of the books and challenges the students to guess which one it's from. And then the other thing is that Lego Club started the week of February 3rd. So they meet for a 4-week session, and in order to get more students involved, they're going to do a second 4-week session beginning on March 10th. The other thing is, I should mention, is that the DI teams are getting to the point where they have finalized their presentations. Tomorrow, one of the teams is going to be presenting to any faculty who can stay after school, and then there will be more presentations on Monday and Wednesday of next week. So the students will try their presentations before a live audience before they go to a competition. So that's what's going on at GMS.
And how many students are involved in that?
I wish I had an exact number, but I believe it's somewhat more than 40. Yeah, I wish I had an exact number.
How many teams altogether?
I had heard there were 6, so I've seen some of them, but I have only heard of 4 presentations, so I'm not sure if there were 4 or 6. Sorry.
Mr. Thompson, later in the agenda, we have an enrollment update, and I don't see an end of February total for first grade registration. Off the top of your head, do you know where we are? We were at 68 at the end of January.
I have not seen any more first grade registration, so if we've gone up, it would only be by 1 or 2, I'm sure. Joyce keeps me pretty up to date.
Thank you.
Also, we're going to be working on our calendar. How did your, this past year, we did 4 late arrivals?
High school had their 4, the same as the last couple of years, and we added 2 late arrivals for elementary and middle school.
All right, so how did, this is to both of you guys, so how did that work out, and would you like to see that be spread across 4 days?
It worked out very well for us. It gave us time to do things during the work hours when teachers are fresh that we otherwise just struggle to find time to do. So I'm trying to think, some of the things we've been able to do are, we had 2 major things this year, Ames Web and the Performance Assessment Network project. So we were able to use that time to present that information to all of the staff, which where otherwise would take a few minutes at a faculty meeting, but we could really then do a whole group presentation and work at the team level, because all of this is kind of grade level based. so that we were able to do a lot more than we otherwise would have. Ames Webb, for example, only 8 people from our staff went to the summer training, but they became, and there were actually 8 people on the other team, they became something of a trained trainer who would then work with other staff members. And those opportunities to work during the school day have been really invaluable at GMS.
Yeah, and for us, the same. We've been able to do, most of the work we've focused on is the performance assessment work. And, I mean, that's just stuff you can't necessarily even do in an hour, so having that time has been.
So did you use those same days for when we then had a full-day teachers workshop like we have coming up next week to lay a foundation for, the activities that would occur on those full-day teacher workshop days?
This year, what we talked about over the summer and going into August and September was that what Julie and I wanted was a year's PD, lay it out, map it to school and district goals, major initiatives that are going on, and how it worked sequentially, what stuff was going to be building level stuff, what was going to be, in the high school subject specific, or at the other schools at grade level specific, and how it fits into the bigger scheme, and how are you making use of this additional time. Principals have forwarded us for review and input the PD plans for all of the times, the late arrival mornings, the in-service days. Next week has been coordinated across the district, and I have to say I'm really pleased with the level of coordination, both between regular education and special education, opportunities when we have to pull all the paras together, and the PD requirement that this year I think has really been well thought out, well aligned, and well conducted, and I know Julie is going to be, I'm going to be with the high school folks and doing a presentation next Tuesday, but Julie is going to be with the middle school folks part of the day and the elementary school folks part of the day, and whenever I've gotten to see what's going on, everything that everybody's been doing has been highly aligned, highly specific, and time, quite well used. So I've been very pleased with especially how the elementary and middle schools have taken advantage of that additional PD time.
Okay, so we go on to LMS.
Okay. I'll start right at the top with the acknowledgements. I've talked a little bit about our math counts team this year. They finally there was a lot of preparation that went into the regional tournament. They competed in the regional tournament in February. Congratulations to the team, the students that qualified. We had a group of about 15 students who then narrowed down to the team that competed, which was Ryan Blow, Ryan Davis, Andy Cruzen, Joe Parenti, Andrew Fay, Cam Norton, Noah Vaughn, and Joe Parenti actually won our school competition. But all of those students were involved in the regional tournament, which is really, if you've never been to a math counts, I'm going to mention this at a former meeting, but if you've never been to a math counts competition, if you have a chance sometime, YouTube it. It's amazing. Some of these kids, the automaticity on, the problems, they're not like a multiplication fact. We're talking like multi-step problems. They're doing these things out in their head in less than 5 seconds. It's phenomenal. So even at our school round, some of the questions that there's a few different rounds, a few different ways that they are assessed. Some of it's just pencil and paper, but then they have a round where they're, similar, where they have a time limit and they have to come up with the answers. So Mr. Blow was the coach. He did a great job with the team, and they continue to meet even after their competition season. They wanted to continue it, so he's continuing to meet with them weekly, and it's gone really well. Just an athletic update. We finished our winter season finally, even if the weather outside is still winter. Boys and girls both qualified for the tournament. The girls lost in the championship game against Pelham, so we continue to have a great feeder system up to Campbell. The boys lost semifinals in overtime by 1 point They had a great season as well. Our spirit team has, they've been to one competition, came in second place. They actually, I shouldn't have said we finished our winter season. They've had 4 postponements of the Tri-County Spirit competition, and they're going tomorrow, finally. It's the 4th time they've rescheduled that. So good luck to our spirit team tomorrow. Our student council does a quarterly Doing Your Best breakfast. We recognized 25 students school-wide at our last breakfast before February break. We talked a lot about John Halligan, and I know we had a lot of support at your level, and also our PTO lended a lot of support to the not just the day, but everything leading up to and following up after. Went really well. The impact was very positive, and we heard a lot of good positive feedback. We were also able to have some serious but very meaningful conversations with students about various, mostly just minor conflicts and things, but that were brought out as a result of the presentation. So it was definitely a beneficial event. A few music notes. First, honors band is a statewide band you have to qualify for. It's very competitive, and we had a number of students who qualified again. Brianna Perry, Trent Lavasser, Seth Bonvelour, Rachel Goldstein, and Matt Nevis. Congratulations to them. And we had 32 students attend the Solo and Ensemble Festival on February 15th. And we have the Group Ensemble Festival coming up later this month. Under curriculum instruction, I mentioned that there is a book. I'll actually save that for the end because I think it's an attachment at the bottom of your agenda, but I will talk about that in a minute. I can't believe how fast this year is going by. The Campbell High School guidance counselors came over yesterday, did their presentation, and we had over 75 of the 8th grade parents here last night for the incoming freshman night at Campbell High School. It was well attended, and students were very excited yesterday just getting the book and looking over the sign-up sheet for the courses, the recommendation sheet. Our performance assessment team, Scott alluded to the performance assessment initiative this year. So our team went to the latest network meeting on February 6th, and so every one of these network meetings, the way they generally set it up is by content area. So they try to mix the groups a little bit, and we have a mix of content areas on our team. We have a science teacher, a social studies teacher, and so they are required to bring a performance assessment that they have used with students. They bring it, and then they share it. And one of our team members was actually one of the highlighted assessment projects that they used at the network that day. So that was pretty neat. And Audra McCollum, and she's been doing a lot of work on this for the past couple of years. On March 11th, that's the PD Day coming up on Tuesday. We're going to be, so we have a school goal. I think I might have mentioned this at the last meeting. Our school goal is that each grade level team will, and this is a minimum requirement, but will implement a position paper by the end of the year. And it can be done in any content area. But the key component to this is that they'll be using common rubrics to assess the writing. And it speaks quite a bit to what I presented earlier. Collecting evidence and not just collecting facts and evidence, but then applying that to something. And so that's going to be a focus of our work on March 11th, calibrating our expectations around writing, using the common rubric, and then coming up with a plan at each grade level for what that position paper will look like. We had benchmark testing on Ames Web recently. It went well. And we'll be doing that again in the later spring. Additionally, in terms of assessment, we'll have NEWA testing in May. And as I mentioned also, we were very fortunate. We won the lottery, the middle school. I'm not sure you heard that in the news, but we were selected for the field test of the Smarter Balance assessment. And it is actually, it really is like taking the test. Carrie and I were looking at sort of the ins and outs of that today, really trying to nail down our schedule. And it'll involve for grade 5 and grade 6 about 4 periods of testing for those students. Along with the actual test that we give, we have a lot of materials that they've provided us with, and we have a lot of sample questions. And so that's been and will be very informative for our staff, the math teachers, the ELA teachers, and all the staff, to really get a flavor for the type of and the level of cognitive rigor that is being demanded of students.
There was a field test that was conducted in a lot of places, including Nashua, which has gotten some attention of late, but it was not an adaptive assessment. So every student got every question,
Right.
which was fairly repetitive. My understanding is that what you're participating in is more of a pilot, and
Right.
it will be in the
More along the
adaptive
lines.
mode, as opposed to every student getting the same question.
Confirmation of, yeah, whether it is or not adaptive. So, and adaptive is basically the question either gets easier or harder, depending on the student and how they're doing on the test, so it really kind of hits their level with the questions, so. And NEWA, the others.
So when the, if it does that, so if a student is, let's say they're 6th grade, and they're taking math questions, and they're getting them right, they may begin to ask them questions from 7th grade.
Right.
If they're getting them incorrect, they may go back to questions in 5th grade, or further back if they need to.
Totally.
So when the score comes out for a specific student, will it then say, John York did math assessment at a grade 7th level? Or will it say he did it at a grade 4th level, if that's what his math skills or reading skills or writing skills or whatever they are? Will it be that, will we know that for a student?
We don't know, I don't think the level, but with NECAP, for every student, we used to get not only a score, but a subscale score. So we're used to that with the assessment that we're doing now, and I think we're anticipating that will happen. So each of the areas where a potential subscore really is a learning progression. So if it's a grade 5 math, and one of the major threads is fractions, they ask a grade 5 level question and a student gets it wrong, they'll back down that learning progression. And so by the very nature of the structure of the assessment, it's built around those areas and how you score in it. Similarly, NWA does a similar thing.
Right.
It gives
The rate score.
a composite score, but also a subscale.
So on the scores that we just got, you guys, I think, discussed them briefly at the last meeting. So is there a way for you to take all that data and move that into a one-page summary that says of all the students at a certain grade level that took a math assessment exam, X a number of them are at grade 5 math?
I don't think we'll get a grade level equivalency, but what we'll do is get a percentage. So for example, I'm expecting that it'll be very much like NECAP, and Mr. Lechleiter does a lot of the data work for LMS. So what you would look at things that are programmatic in nature. In other words, so if our students on average did this, how did we do, for example, in informational text, in reading and writing versus literary text? How did we do with the higher order thinking? How do we do in constructed response questions versus selected response questions? And so you're able to look at programmatically, and that's primarily how we do things, to look at from a program basis. Where are we getting success? Where are we getting traction? Where are the areas where our students are not doing as well as we would like? And try to go that way. We do get, that,
So how do
that
these
individual information.
So so you received those scores back here recently. So how do you, when you analyze that, I mean, schools, I understand you guys get them at a more student-specific level. So if you have a student that's struggling in reading math or whatever the assessment, what is the process that we use to come along that student, beside that student, that if they're a half a grade or maybe that's not so much of an issue, but if they're a grade down you know, if they're grade up, then, you know, what are we doing to challenge them? But at the same time, what are we doing to come along these students and begin the process? You know, because inevitably what we see occur is they keep moving, they get 3 years of no assessments, and we get to 11th grade and we're like, you know, we go like that. So how are we handling that?
I can give you a quick answer, I can give you a very long answer, but I'll just do something in the middle. So we have chat teams that are child assistant teams. We have one for the fifth and, we have a team that meets every single week for each grade level, all right? So we have a chat team for 5th and 6th, a chat team for 7th and 8th grade. I'll take the 5th and 6th as an example. So they meet every week. At the beginning of the year, well, first of all, let me just say that we try to stay away from reacting to one data point. You know, so we give a number of different assessments in the district: NECAP, NEWA, Ames Web. You know, just to name.
I'm saying that you're going to see you're going to see a broader picture with all these.
Yeah.
tests.
So the first thing we do is start to screen and look. Okay, we have spreadsheets with, you know, the student names with their scores all the way from whenever till the present. And then what we do on our team is if we see anything that drops below proficiency, this is all color-coded, and we flag that student. And we say, even one data point, we flag that student, we say, okay, was this an anomaly? Is there a pattern here? And then we actually have sheets. Our chat teams, this is more this year. I mentioned RTI, that we've been doing work in RTI this year. So we've really developed a system around this now. So that we actually have student sheets for each student. If they're particularly the ones that are in danger, that have dropped below proficiency, and then we track them, we progress monitor those kids with Ames Web. That's what the tool we've been using more. Because the thing is with NEWA, you test them once a year, spring to spring, maybe 3 times at most. NECAP once a year. So it just doesn't give you enough information. So then we go into something a little more intensive, and we look at what are the interventions that are in place for those kids. Are they in Title I math? Are they in Title I reading? Are they getting any support around core, which is one of our intervention classes? Do they get enrichment support during the, you know, enrichment is one of our support classes during the day. And we really analyze that, and it's a weekly. With Ames Web, that's really been a help for us because we were, before this year, the progress monitoring tools we were using were somewhat inconsistent, you know. Ames Web really brings out the bar. It really aligns everything for us on that piece. So we really spent a lot of time analyzing it. In fact, today we were just, our chat team for 7th and 8th grade was updating because we have some new scores that we want to just make sure that the kids are making progress. And if they're not, we need to do something different. What we're doing isn't working, we need to do something different, or maybe, you know, maybe their identification wasn't accurate, or, you know, maybe something's changed, we need to investigate it further. But those are conversations we're having on a regular basis. The chat team consists of myself, Carrie, the assistant principal, guidance, school psychologist. It's a whole team. Special ed teacher, regular teachers come in as needed, and it's. In terms of our building, I can't speak for, but in terms of our building, we've really been able to bring together that progress monitoring piece this year. I feel much more confident about the way we're doing that this year. And I think a lot of that is Ames Web, but we've also, with the RTI training, it's benefited us this year.
If I could throw in as well, one of the other things that the middle school, under Tom's leadership, has been doing is looking at ways that they can keep the groups of kids with adults together. So the guidance counselors roll with their class. So it's not like I get a different guidance counselor every year. I have a guidance counselor, and they roll up. So this year, Ms. Cummings is 5 and 8, and
Lynn Ellis is 6 and 7.
Lynn Ellis is 6 and 7. So next year, Lynn's 2 classes will move up, and she'll have 7 and 8.
Yeah.
And Mary will be at 5 and 6. Likewise, with we're looking at for special education, the person.
Some looping with special education,
Right.
so that again, there's consistency.
So instead of having a new case manager every year, there would at least for a 2-year period have to be consistency among the case managers. So you have more consistency of adults working with students over time who are able to monitor and be able to determine. I mean, by the time you get to know a kid and it's 4 months into the school year, you've lost that time. But by doing a looping model, wherever we have the ability to do that with guidance or with, in case of special education, that gives us that quicker turnaround time because they know the child from the prior year and they're better able to monitor and determine what's working and not. So they've really put some thought and some effort into the systems that they're putting in place.
So on the other side of that, so now you have identified students that are proficient. So now you have students that are proficient with distinction.
Mm-hmm.
What are we doing to create challenging problems, processes, things for them in the classroom? Because we don't want them to be bored and just going through the motions.
Well, for one thing, there should be differentiation happening in the classroom. But I will say that the resources we have for those kids are not nearly, if you look at our district, and that's one of the reasons why, I brought forward, like, in the past, I've talked about an enrichment specialist. I think we really need to start thinking in terms of putting more resources toward those kids. As a small district, I know we're limited on that, but I think, we look at that data too in chat. We actually look at that data too.
I
with
think
those
it's
kids.
one of those things where it could be, the answer can't be we need another person, but, maybe we buy math curriculum or, reading or whatever the curriculum may be that's a little bit more challenging because, it could be administered, hopefully in the classroom by the teacher, at times, as they're trying to teach across.
We've
20
actually had
different students.
the last couple of meetings with LMS administration. Dr. Hien and I and Mr. Lecklider and Ms. Finnegan have looked at that specifically in the area of math.
Yeah.
And we really believe that there's two steps to this. One is an enrichment model, and then the other really is much more of an acceleration model, especially with math. One of the things that we're looking at for the math program for grade 7 next year is Dr. Heon is, I think, going to see if she can get us another deal with the textbook manufacturer. There's a math program that a subscription available 24/7, 365 for students. So that if we're looking at that additional grade 7 math and some availability of technology, students will be able to access that. So we have the ability to use that for math. We have the ability also to try to figure out where VLAX middle school classes can fit into some of our acceleration models. It's free. Students can sign up.
We're already using that.
How does, yeah, so how does these things start to fit in a sustainable model over time? For too long, really, we've said, well, the student, those students are doing fine. We need to focus on the ones who are not doing as well. And I think we've come to realize that having them continue to do fine really isn't good enough, and that we have to do just that. The question becomes, how do you move from where we are with differentiation? And there is some additional, support with the flexibility in the middle school schedule, but then move to a more systemic piece that doesn't put all of the onus on every classroom teacher, and how do we distribute that load? Because a teacher's life is a very busy life, and they're very busy, and they have a lot of kids to worry about. So unless we give them assistance with that, what you're left with is basic differentiation, which I agree with you, doesn't meet the needs of that highest percentage. Also an area where technology, I think, will be able to help us with that by both expanding the day and expanding the opportunity.
Well, I would encourage, both Scott and Ms. Thompson and Ms. Flickblatter to look at those processes, but not so much with individuals added, but as far as programs, curriculum, and things like that. Now, that's a process, and we piloted a program that we just heard a little bit more about, You know, and maybe that's things that we look to do, but I think it's, you know, we really have three groups across. We have those that are struggling, those that are in the middle, and those that are achieving at a higher level. And in reality, we got to try to feed all three of them a challenging day at school.
One of the things we talked about last week in our meeting was how we connect with other districts about our size to see how they're using those resources. So I was able to connect with the superintendent in Guilford. They have been using that math program for about 3 years, and I have to have a follow-up conversation with the superintendent. But what we're looking at is taking, for example, one of the people involved in next year's grade 7 piece, which is more remedial in nature, and perhaps Beth Singalas, who is a grade 5 math teacher, on a couple of site visits to look at how different programs are being used in that enrichment and enhancement model. So that's where we are. We're hoping to get some traction on that in terms of getting more information to help for programming for next year. So we are taking some concrete steps. Not perhaps as many or as quickly as steps or as quickly as we would like, but that group of kids are on the radar, and Tom and Carrie are doing some good work in that while they're doing all the other stuff as well.
Well, I mean, I read through the minutes, and it seemed that at the high school, some of the things that we put in, all day math, and things like that seem to be working.
Yep.
I see that we did add back, hopefully for a short period of time, one class that was a little bit less than that. But I think that, I think if we continue to strive to the highest level, that hopefully all students can move along. And, our teachers do very well. And I think we just have to continue to encourage them and provide them with, curriculum and things that allow them to challenge all the students in their classes. So.
And sometimes things work out better than you better or not as well as you would like. We made the change this year to go to AP Calculus every day, and there were some students who conflicted out because it now took up, a quarter of their schedule instead of an eighth. And I also heard from some other students and some other parents who said they would never have taken AP Calc if they didn't know that they would have the support of every day. And so so now the question becomes, how do you try and meet both those needs in a small high school with limited resources? And so with Ms. Angelini, I think the way she teaches and her skill set allows her to have kids operate very independently in that class. So she may be capable of having somebody be there every day because they need it in AP Calc, and others only every second day, so they can also take another credit as well and still do well on the AP exam. So, but quite honestly, that level of flexibility is a rarity even among very good teachers. But it is something that we are working at, and we're trying to monitor. I know Principal Rothaus reported out last week on the freshman seminar for this year, and it was more of a teacher rubric than it was a course rubric. But I think back to one of the points that Mr. Miller makes, and that is the implementing new things is nice, but once we get some real data around whether or not it's making the difference that we want, then how do we know how we're doing? And so that's one of the areas, part of this report of tonight was for that.
Theory.
In theory. Thank you.
All right, so just a few more items here. We, as I mentioned earlier, we had, maybe I didn't mention it, it was a perk I was thinking of. We've been using Core 6 as a staff read this year. Today, Martha Thayer presented another chapter in Core 6 and presented on academic vocabulary, which was very helpful, provided some strategies on teaching vocabulary to students and doing so in context of their writing and various other means. A few items of note. Our first eighth grade Washington DC trip fundraiser, Super Bowl subs, was a success, raising over $2,000. Special thanks to Kathy Snyder, Ruth Christino, Julie Zach, Maureen Martinage, and many others for organizing the fundraiser. And then our Krispy Kreme orders were due before break. We sold 1,485 dozen donuts. They will arrive, dozen donuts, it's 17,000 donuts. They'll be arriving on Friday for pickup.
That's a lot of Krispy
That's a lot of
Kreme, man.
donuts coming to Litchfield on Friday.
There's going to be a honey shortage in the Northeast, making the glaze.
Actually, I want to thank Mark Cloutier, a parent of an eighth grader. He's heading down with, a little angel called me today. I was going to go down with Mark, and then a parent called today and said, hey, I'll go down with him. And so they've rented vans to go pick the donuts up and bring them back for 6 a.m. on Friday.
That's a
So,
lot of dozen donuts.
yeah, that was a
I think
nice
I would
phone
drive
call to
down the
get
night
today.
before and spend the night at Mohegan Sun and then drive
That's
back.
happened before.
Versus leaving at midnight to be back by
They
6
did that.
a.m., but that's just me.
They did that last year, yeah. And then you can see the calendar of upcoming events. We have the District Art Music Festival coming up in a couple of weeks. And spring sports tryouts are coming soon, a couple of weeks. So,
You can have tryouts, but you're not going outside
yeah,
for a
may
while.
not be- maybe hitting into snowbanks for a while, so.
Well, Tom, we'll be there on the 12th, so, and we'll see you on the morning of the 13th.
Oh, yeah, thank you, John. We have a big group this year, 134, I think. I can confirm that. But
Is that just students, or is that everybody?
oh, that's true. No, that's just students.
Okay.
So I'll get you the full count.
Somewhere around 150, 155.
Yeah, I'd say, yeah, somewhere in there.
So, are you going to do this book that you've
Oh, that's
got
right, the book.
attached?
Yes. Okay, so I believe Julie attached
The Omnivore's
The
Dilemma.
Omnivore's Dilemma. I'm going to pass the book around. I only have one copy.
Was that today? I didn't make it.
Yes, this was today.
My day just
Went over it today.
blew up on me.
Short
This-
timer.
I don't know if I don't know if you've heard of this book. It's actually
was not
a
a
New York
good
Times
day.
bestseller. This is a younger version of the adult book, but the nature of the book is basically, and it's in this right up here, but it's basically about it's very relevant to Litchfield actually. Where foods come from, and I'm not going to do it justice. If you look at it, it'll make a little more sense. But where foods come from, the secrets behind what you eat, and it's actually a large portion of the book is about farming and just the science behind it, but it's written in kind of a humorous tone, so it's definitely appeals to the age group. Jody Corbett, who was here earlier, is requesting that we move this forward. The PER committee approved it today, and I'm bringing it to you tonight. You
Did
have
anybody bring up the fact that the Lexile score is pretty low?
the Lexile score is, so what we do, and I know you've heard this from Julie, but we look at the band for the Lexile. The Lexile is on the lower end. I'd say I don't have the entire band number in front of me for Lexile.
It says the Lexile band for 8th grade is
Yeah.
925 to 1185, and this book
Okay.
is a 930.
Yeah, so it's on the lower end of the band.
Does that
Now-
mean for readability?
That means for like
For
the
complexity and,
text complexity, right. So we look at two things. We look at qualitative and quantitative analysis. So we really analyze both parts to the book. So, yeah, the quantitative piece is on the lower end. It's a nonfiction book. There's a lot of vocabulary that's really very specific to the food and the topic. The reason Jody has chosen this book is one of the resources we've been using this year in developing units aligned to the standards is actually from the Department of Ed in New York. And they have a site called Engage New York, which has a lot of units that have already been developed that are aligned to the standards. And so this was one of, she's not using the entire unit, but this was one of the resources and a large chunk of that unit. And there's a lot of activities that come from that unit that are in here in your packet. But like we talked about earlier, a lot of it, position paper writing, developing developing an argument and using evidence to support the argument, And it goes on and on. If you looked at the map here, the curriculum map.
Well, my concern is that, the Lexile score being on the low end, and I feel like we've been hit with a lot of books that are ending up on the low end because of its content, we're allowing them to go through. But this, being on the low end, and the teacher has the check marks on the high end of, language, vocabulary, it doesn't seem to jive with the Lexile score.
Yeah, and I can't speak specifically to how they arrived at that Lexile score. I think when Jody looked at it, she was looking more at the specifics of the vocab. A lot of the vocabulary in here is really specific to the content, the topic, and it's not necessarily something that the students have done a
Is
lot.
there nothing a little more higher in the Lexile score that they could have used that would do the job?
Quite honestly, I don't know what other titles were considered. So, this just went through today, and Julie was wondering if I could mention this tonight. So, I can get that information, other texts that were
So
considered.
we're not being asked to vote for this tonight?
Well, if you're, we could, but if
I'm
you
not
want more
inclined to vote
information-
for it, is my problem.
Well, why don't we wait
We
until...
can get more information.
Until
Yeah.
next meeting where
I'd
Julie
like
will
to
be
know
here.
if there is a book that would be a little higher.
By the
I
way-
won't be here next
Yeah.
time, but,
Oh, that's right.
We're gonna let you stay
so
on the per
I'm
committee
getting
as
a little
citizen.
cranky now.
We'll
but
let
We're gonna have you stay on the per committee as a citizen.
Well, we can do a
I
conference
might,
call.
I
I want
might,
you there, I want you.
because it seems like the Lexile bands are always on the low
Just-
side.
Just so you know, teachers and apparently superintendents are not real good judges of Lexile scores. One of the commissioners' meetings, we had a very talented person in and went through the exercise.
No, this is a very easy
Technical-
read. This is not
technical
hard.
language.
This is 8th grade.
Yeah.
It
Technical-
needs to start cranking it
Technical
up.
language that's in text. Educators tend to read that as reading difficulty, but if it's information that you can just go look up a definition of it, and it doesn't increase the difficulty of the read, it increases the conceptual level of the knowledge required on that side, but it's not necessarily more difficult in terms of reading, because you can look it up out of context. So that sort of placement is relatively typical of non-experts. And most people who are not reading teachers, but regular teachers, fall to that same issue. And I have to say, I did the exact same thing. It was a science reading, lots of technical science terms, and so we tend to attach to it the conceptual level that the term goes with, and not the Lexile level. So that doesn't concern me as much, because I know I did at least that bad, if not worse, in terms of the estimate.
Well,
I got.
You're reading through it.
I am reading through this, The Mushroom Hunter, Do-It-Yourself Meal, My Pig. It would be, it's an interesting book, but I don't know if it's challenging to an 8th grader. Maybe it's my ideas of living when we lived on a farm, we had animals and stuff, but, most of that stuff, kids that, if they live raised on a farm, they know about most of that 4th and 5th grade. So, in reading that would be more of a read that's that age group than it is for an 8th grade age group. Just glancing through it, it's an easy read. It would not be a hard read. It may not be interesting to them, but it would not be a challenging read to get through.
Yeah, I'm not inclined to like this.
I would
I
say
don't know.
that.
Did you want to take a look at it?
Yeah,
I don't like it.
Page 227.
I won't be here, but,
Yeah,
227.
yeah, that was pretty, showed how a cow got slaughtered today. That was pretty.
it's just in my mind is if we have gone on some low Lexiles just because of content, and they didn't have anything else to go for. But I'm inclined not to do that again. I'm feeling that we're getting too many of those.
yeah, I was just bringing this forward. I know Jody, I know she did quite a bit of research. Again, she was taking this from a site that is not just a site. It's Department of Education, New York, who's really ahead of the curve on a lot of this work. So I think it was a lot of work and research that had already been done. I hear what you're saying, Trish, in terms of the Lexile number. So that is what it is. And I think, you kind of have to look at the whole package here.
I almost feel like I need to look at what my daughter was reading in 8th grade, and I know it wasn't anything close to that.
Is garlic a fruit?
Well, I wouldn't
It's on
call
the
it that.
This
Are
is-
they calling it a
This,
fruit?
this is for the Lit Tech class. So, kids are reading books for ELA, for language arts as well. It's just one of two classes, but.
Yeah, so they list Australia as the spot for oranges and apples. Last time I looked in the US, most of those come from Florida and Washington, but that's just me. There's like no fruits and vegetables from the US in that book. They're all.
Well, half can come from Chile.
Well,
too.
you know what, Tom? We'll take that up with Julie. How about that?
Sure.
You know,
I would say we're inclined to
Trish, I'll
have
take your
her.
position.
We're disinclined, we are
Thank you.
disinclined to acquiesce.
You may want to pass that on, though, Tom, that it
Yeah.
did not get a raving
Can't, that's
support
okay.
out of the board.
It's from
To
Pirates of the
volunteers,
Caribbean.
if
I
you
will
decide to
let
give your seat on perk.
I'll be emailing them during the next meeting. Okay, so what are we up to? Student representative comments. You're on.
Thanks, guys.
Oh, yeah, thank you, guys.
Unless you want to shout.
Thank you.
Till next month.
Yeah.
It's twice tonight.
I mean,
I think that's how much time next time.
Yeah, I know.
This is a lot tonight.
Ryan and I did not get a chance to meet with Ms. Ralphouse to really discuss anything that would be brought up tonight, so I don't really have a lot to say. We also just got off vacation, so, not too much. Things going on at Campbell, I know our girls' basketball team, is something exciting right now. Other than that, we just had a student council conference today in Salem, our statewide conference, and just did some leadership activities and had a nice inspirational speaker. I don't know if I haven't been here since we did carnations for Valentine's Day, actually. So we did do that. They got pushed off because of the snow day. So
Was it snowing Valentine's?
yeah, there was snow on
Thursday and Friday.
Thursday and Friday. So what ended up happening was Ryan was extremely determined that the people in Litchfield who ordered carnations would get them on Friday. So he drove around Litchfield for hours delivering carnations
Did he
to
really?
people's homes. And everyone who he wasn't able to bring them to got them on that Monday. They're a little shriveled and dead by that point, but
They didn't have the little
It still worked out
tabs on the
okay.
bottom that hold the water?
No, they did. They're all in buckets of water, though.
Oh,
but that was really great of him, though. He drove to Mr. McDonough's house in Salem to pick them up, and then spent the day delivering them around Litchfield to students. So that was great. And I don't really know much else of what we've had going on. We had the upcoming freshman night this week. That's really all.
Okay.
All right.
Any questions?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
The girls are actually playing at 4 o'clock Saturday. The championship game.
Boys start their
Basketball?
playoff run tomorrow night at 7 in boys basketball.
And I think wrestling did very well. I think they came in second in their division for,
Yeah, they had several people that got onto the podium that
Right.
finished in second or third for their class.
Where the boys play here
Boys play here.
yeah.
on Thursday.
Yeah, if they win Thursday, there's an interesting dilemma because the girls' game would be at 4 and the boys' game would be at 7.
Where would the boys be playing?
Boys should play at home.
Oh, back at home?
Yeah, so.
It'd be a great party back here at Campbell.
Could be.
All right, so now we go on to committee reports.
2 hours.
The Budget Committee has a meeting scheduled for the 27th. They've kicked out an agenda, so whoever gets ordained on the 19th will have a meeting all set. They've kicked out a calendar. They're going to discuss what went right, what went wrong in the budget process, and what they could do to be better at their next meeting. And
A
That'll
lot
be
of his,
entertaining.
a lot is on the expectations of the town and the school. Make
Yeah.
sure that the information's
They,
brought a
they're,
little quicker.
they have set a calendar for the school based on the rough calendar. It's the 6 days in December. They're not, they don't have us penciled in for anything in November, but, you know, I think that's, I think that the school system is going to try to do some things a little differently on their budget instead of waiting until September. I think they may try to work on it with the administrators over the summer, so, which may, I mean, our calendar can be different and they can get it earlier. You know, I think the process gets so compacted in December that I don't know if we get a fair shake with our budget in the sense that they do a detailed check, but they end up just cutting, you know, and I don't know how to change that because I don't know what the process is. It seems that their focus is more or
You think more time
less.
will change that?
No, I don't, but, you know, what's frustrating is that we make people available to the budget committee. Senior managers come in and present their budgets and things like that. And it either the questions don't come to them to ask when the person is there that is best qualified to give them the answer, and then they go into the next meeting and they didn't really talk when the person was there, but the next meeting, they all have, 10 or 12 questions that are better directed to the individual that,
Maybe we should have them at that next
well,
meeting.
I don't know. That may be something that may be easier to present the budget to them here and then have the manager come at the next meeting.
Yeah.
Because it's just numbers and then,
How about sending the budget
know,
off a week ahead of time?
well, they have the budget in November. They have the whole, they have the whole budget. So they're supposed to
Maybe just
review.
remind them that we're gonna be doing this portion of it.
Well, they're
that,
supposed,
so have
they
your
know
questions
that.
They have a schedule.
They have a
I
schedule,
know.
so,
I
but
mean,
it
they had it
seems,
for a week, well,
But it-
probably
it-
10 days before they met on
it
it.
just seems to me through the process, whether it be the town or school, that a lot of the times, for some of them, it seems it's the first time they've actually sat and heard or looked at it. And so they are at the meeting, they hear the presentation of the numbers, and then they spend the next week a little bit of homework on it, and then they have their questions. So we may want to look at that process because I think that making sure that the person that they want to answer the question, whether it be Kyle and IT, I mean food and some things, again, I think that you can present the numbers, and then if they're going to continue that process of asking questions, I think we're better presenting the budget and then having the expert, SPED, IT, the following week when they seem to have a lot of their questions.
Well, you know what, I'm guilty of it too, is that I come in to a meeting and we have a discussion on things, and it's not until after the meeting that you think of even more questions. And so having the person to answer those questions at the following meeting might be more productive.
So, I mean, that may be something that whoever's on the budget committee may want to, take a look at that process. But again, I think it allows us to better answer the questions that they have. And, because I think for them, they get very frustrated, and I can understand that when we presented a budget, then we're there, they're asking you questions, and we may not always have that detail, especially if it's, in special services or, transportation, and we go, well, let's get that information back to you. And I think that sort of just creates more of an issue. And I think that we should try very hard to not have that to be an issue, so.
Would it be helpful, do you think, either of you, if we, I mean, what they've gotten for the last 2 years is superintendent's priorities, which really, I think, captures, what I think are the board's priorities, because I think there's pretty tight alignment. But they get that once a year, and then they're responding to. Would it be beneficial to, you know, meet with them outside of the budget cycle to talk about the priorities and what's going on and why, so that.
Well, they'll meet in March, and they won't meet again until September.
You're not gonna meet in April?
I don't believe they
I
met.
thought they met in April and May just to review,
May, June.
Or do they? Okay.
mainly to review the budget status. How, what are the, you know,
Yeah,
how are the
that's true.
expenditures
That's right, how the
trending against
expenditures-
the,
They're gonna meet May 22nd.
Are they meeting in April?
24th,
24th, okay.
like once a month.
Yeah, well, that normally it's just the
then they
fourth
meet usually
Thursday.
the end of August, and then they start in September.
August they don't meet.
Yeah, they don't meet in July and August at all. But then they come back in September, and I think they have a meeting, and I think the next meeting, they're right into the town stuff.
Yeah, 25th September.
In that, or the town is at their first meeting when they get back in September, so.
All right, any other committee reports? None? Okay, we move on to enrollment report.
If you look at the trend, it's pretty similar to last year. And we're up 6 students from September enrollments. 2 of those, however, are from the pre-K. So it's highly, so it's not really an enrollment piece, the actual enrollment, that's adding students to programs. So the enrollment is up by 4, which is better than being down by 4, given that our adequacy funding is tied to enrollments. I just looked up the projections, and the projections are for a decrease of about another 50 to 60 for next year, down to 1370 something. If you look at the size of the freshman, or sorry, the senior high school class, it is 107, and we will graduate, you know, all, if not, you know, hopefully all, if not very close to all of those students. And our registrations for grade 1 are 68 now, probably at 80 some. So that's, you know, a difference of half that projected change for next year. The next 2 years, if you look at the cohorts as they move along, this is the big group in grade 8 this year, 139. So that group moves into the freshman slot, and the group of 144 sophomores move to junior status. And so the numbers the registration of 476 this year will jump to over 500 as we lose a relatively small graduating class. And we'll have for a couple of years 2 large groups, the last 2 large groups that we have enrolled in the district at this point in time. Want to remind the board that last year we reduced the middle school academic core teachers by 1, and the grade 8 team, the entire team, taught a 6-block class. I know it's been a very busy and demanding year for them. I want to acknowledge them for taking that on, and I think doing a very good job with it. But that position was ripped last year. We paid roughly the equivalent of the salary in 6-block classes, so there is that saving, but the saving has already been taken and rolled into next year's budget. The high school will stay up over 500 for 2 years and then drop down to about this level again. And the year after that, it'll drop down to around 430 some is the projection. So we're, other than grade 8, what's behind that really is classes of, you know, grade level teams of 5s, and then if we have a 4 again this year, this will be 1 and 2 both with 4. So, 2 years in a row of 4. All, like politics, all real estate is local. And we still have families moving in, but given that the state trend is a 2% drop per year, if our real estate market is like most people's real estate markets, on average, that's what you're gonna see. And there will be opportunity, there will be times that there'll be no savings if we lose 30 kids across the district, because that'll be across 13 grade levels, and that's 3 students at a grade level, and you don't do much. And then there'll be times where you will be able to, decrease your costs. And, we'll have to plan for those as best we can and try to not only protect and maintain, but hopefully enhance programs at the same time while we're trying to be fiscally responsible. So that's the challenge going forward. Maintain or actually improve programs while trying to give the taxpayers very good value for their dollar, and allowing students to achieve at high levels and leave here aspiring to do some very good things. So.
Kindergarten numbers right now, do you know where they were last year?
No, I don't, but I can get that. I think the kindergarten registrations.
I know it goes up, it's the year goes up, but I'm just curious.
Yeah.
This time last year,
I thought it was in the 70s.
kindergarten was 47.
Oh, that was
Yeah.
way off.
First grade was 61. That's as of the end of February. Those are end of February numbers, so we're slightly ahead in first grade, and I guess about the same.
It's not inconceivable, but I would be surprised if we see this sort of grade 1 numbers jump up the way we did. What was it, a year ago?
Two years ago, wasn't it?
Go to 100.
I think we need 93 to go to a 5th grade 1 class. That's a lot. It's the lowest student who moves the average class population to 1 full student above. So it's not 20.2, it's 21.0 or 20.8, something like that for an average. So.
Yeah, 68 is going to be a hard sell, because with 4 teachers, you're at like 16.
I suspect it'll go up from there.
17.
But I don't think you're going to hit the 93 that you're going to need for a 5th. We haven't budgeted for it, so let's hope.
I'm thinking if you stay at 44, you almost could offer all-day kindergarten to everybody that wanted it.
All right,
You'd end up with 22.
so we're moving on to old or unfinished business. I don't see anything. New business? If I put my glasses on, I'll be able to read this better. The district calendar.
Essentially built off of, no, thanks, I got it right here. Built off of last year's, the 11th and 14th of November, very similar. This year was 11th. And 15. Christmas is a day later, so if you look at the Christmas break, it would be.
Is the election on the 4th?
Next year, the election looks like it's on the 10th.
Second Tuesday of
Yeah.
March.
No, not in March, but national election in November.
Oh. That's a good question.
I think it's probably the 11th.
Because this is
I
down
think it's the
Veterans
first
Day.
Tuesday after the 7th. If I remember.
Because that would make it Veterans Day.
I don't know.
It's just
I'm
a
just
question.
saying, I think the way it's structured is the first Tuesday after the 7th.
We need to answer that question, maybe we can. I mean, that's an off election.
Google knows all.
Would it be a governor's election that year?
Yes.
So it would be the full House, full Senate, and the governor for New Hampshire election. Wouldn't be a national election because that's this year, right? 2014.
No, this is House, this should be
that
Governor.
will be this November.
House and Senate.
That will be, it'll be
Oh,
the
that will be this.
midterm.
Governor, House, and Senate.
This year, in
Yeah.
for New Hampshire.
Yeah, and I don't think there's a federal election next year.
Third of the,
Oh, actually, yeah, wait, no.
I know this is a midterm for Congress and have.
Tuesday, November 4th,
Okay,
for the US elections.
okay.
Okay. So we're
what is
good.
it, a third of the Senate
Yeah,
will be out?
third of the Senate.
Not
all
in,
of
not
the
in
House.
15.
Half of Congress,
Not in 15.
All of Congress,
all of Congress?
That's this year, 14.
yeah. Yeah, which is the calendar we're looking at.
Yeah, that's true.
Christmas break, it goes late, it goes to Monday, Tuesday before Christmas with the 24th, 25th, and I'll throw a Canadian and British term as Boxing Day, the 26th off.
You can't do that.
What?
No Canadian terms here.
And then the full week between there and students back on,
So-
late on the
Are we going to have school on the 4th
4th of,
November?
For voting? Usually we do,
Well,
right?
I made the argument last year that having the 10th off, having the March election day off hurts attendance because people go and do things. And there was concern about security that I had said maybe we could work on that, so when we got around to this next year, we would have a plan in place such that we could have school in session, albeit we wouldn't be able to use the gym
Right.
on the March election, but you also have the point John makes, what do you do in November? And if you do it on one and not on the other,
I mean, we're using that day as a teacher's workshop in March. Isn't that correct?
I think, I agree with Mr. Miller, there are some things you can do to address the safety concerns. I think the problem basically you need to hire somebody to be, vote where the art room is, so that from there up becomes segregated. The problem becomes people who park out in this parking lot because this parking lot is full, and then the first set of parents gets in the building, and they go down the hall, and they open the door for the other parents coming behind them when they go out this door. So,
But normally everybody ends up having to park on this side on that side during,
I think that was, one of the big things was parking, because the students park here, so the teachers park there, so you have less parking overall.
yes.
parking is an issue,
Yeah.
especially when you need to also park all the people who are working at the polling
Polls,
station all day.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're gonna have a problem on the 4th of November, where you're gonna have probably at least as large a turnout as you're gonna have in March.
Only larger at that.
I would think it would be
I'm just
larger.
saying, given it's a mid-year, it's an off year, off presidential year election.
In the calendar, February and April breaks are the same. We've kept the 2-hour delay, the 2 in the fall, and put question marks on the March 18th and May. Where is it?
April.
April.
Sorry, April 15th, thank you. The delayed opening, which this year is high school only, and the question becomes, would we continue it? The high school is coming back into some significant NEASC work. And I think that they have made good use of their delayed arrivals. The other thing to take into consideration is that the elementary and the middle schools both have more hours than they're needed under state regulations. The high school has significantly more hours than are required as a minimum. So there's that to be taken into consideration.
So basically, in basically March, April, and May, students have 3 half-days. Because in May, they're out for senior projects.
Short days.
Or shorter days.
Yeah.
At the high school.
Now, we originally did those late arrivals purely for NEASC. It's now to something beyond that for the other schools.
I think, looking at what's on the docket, I received the final version of what's on, and I think all 3 schools are taking good advantage of the time for the PD that they're doing. I did have some conversations, and I think your recollection is accurate, that the original rationale was purely driven by addressing NEAS concerns. I think that changed probably several years ago. I can tell you.
Unbeknownst to us at the time, I would say. I mean, my other comment on that is, it's always a Wednesday. I know it aligns with Nashua, but given the block scheduling, you are chopping day 2 classes for the high school 4 or 5 times.
Well, with the new schedule, the high school is supposed to be flexing that. So that, for example, if it's a Wednesday class that's canceled, what they should be doing is not running the modified day 1 and running day 1, day 2, day off, day 1, day 2 to equalize that schedule. That was one of the advantages of it, that allows you to do that.
As long as we're doing it. 'cause
Yeah,
we're
is that
stacking everything up
actually
on a
gonna
Wednesday.
happen?
So if we ask that question, will we get told that that's what's occurring in the high school?
Could you rephrase the question? No. I don't know, but I can check.
Because we've had many opportunities for that. There's been many snow days that were not Mondays.
Are there, but we should be able to do the same with that. I do know that we did that last year. We equalized, and students were told about a change in date because we had 2 blizzard bag days in a row, or no, 2
Yeah,
school
but last
cancellations.
year,
Yeah, we didn't have the
everything
same
was blocked,
schedule.
so they could easily sway that.
But part of the issue also becomes a majority of holidays
On
fall on a
Mondays.
Monday.
Right.
Right.
And it was impacting.
Whatever that Monday, if it was A or B.
Right.
Are there anything, we'll look into the federal election. Any other questions? And we'll put this on the docket for the 19th for a vote.
Is there a reason why not in November that the teacher conference is on Friday rather than the Monday beforehand?
Then Monday,
Because they used the afternoon of that Friday, or that Thursday, to start them, and then they finish them on Friday. They start them on the 13th, right after school, maybe about 3 o'clock, and they run till 8 o'clock, and then they do all day Friday. So if you did it on Monday, they would still need to find part of another day to finish it.
in order to have a significant conversation with parents, it does take more than a full day if you've got, I mean, you want a really high parent turnout, and you want to be able to have meaningful conversations. That is the issue.
Well, I mean, I understand it, but it's not, you don't have anywhere enough time. I mean, you're in and out in 10, 12 minutes. I mean, so, and I mean, that, you know, for my son this year, you know, that was, you know, 6 teachers in 12 minutes, so, you know, that's his, you know, boom, 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 yes, yes, no, whatever. You know, it's not, it truly does not give enough time to have a conversation with all the teachers in that process. I mean, I think they're doing as good a job as they can through that process, but you know, you almost have to set up an individual
special
meeting,
time.
a special
What
time.
makes it even worse is if you happen to be stuck behind someone who goes a little longer.
Well, and then you got those
Which
that go a little
impacts
shorter
everything,
as
yeah.
well, you know, I had, you know, 2 students who, you know, go in, yeah, they're fine, in and out. Another one, I had to go more in depth.
Well, you know, you talk to the parents that go to the high schools, and they're here for 2 hours. Because they're going
They
to.
go through the class.
They go through, you know, they're going to a different class, and then they get 10 minutes with that teacher. At the middle school, it's, you sit down, and there's 6 teachers, and the first 3 talk, and then they get up and move to another room so they can start another conversation. You met with these 3, and they went and joined back up. At least that's, you know, what I saw this year. So it was a much different, the processes are much different in the sense that, you know, at the high school, you are going to be here, you know, much longer time as you move through the 6 classes or the 8 classes. If you decide to meet with each, you know, even if it's 10 minutes, that's 80 minutes, so it's an hour and 20 minutes if you get a perfect schedule lined up for yourself.
Plus you get 4 minutes passing.
So going back to that question, John, I know it's my question anyway, doing on the 10th, I know what you're saying, you need the 13th, but why couldn't they use the 12th instead of 13th? So they have a full day first.
Well, they could have a full day on the 10th.
Yeah, they have a full day on the 10th and have a.
And then the afternoon on the 12th.
Or you could even do the afternoon on 12th and the 13th and stretch it out a little bit.
If I recall, part of the rationale is actually that the 15th tends to fall on the Friday of that week tends to fall on exactly the reporting date.
And the 10th would make a 4-day weekend.
Yeah, you're also going to get very limited, or a lower participation rate.
Participation
I
of the
would
parents.
suspect.
You'd have more time to spend with teachers.
You would, but I don't know if that's the idea. Just to make it easier for school board members to meet with the teachers.
I mean, it's a good problem to have. The guy that sits next to me at work, his son is a teacher at Nashua North, and they just went parent-teacher conferences, so he teaches 5 classes of math, and he had 6 parents out of that body of students show up for
Really?
parent-teacher conferences. So I think we're actually in a good spot where
Yeah.
we get a good bit of participation from parents across all 3 schools, and I don't know that we want to,
Discourage that?
well, or make it more difficult.
Right.
Or make it, now do I go to parent-teacher conference, or do I take the 4-day weekend and go somewhere in October?
Some problems are better problems to have.
No, that is, I mean, I think that in the middle school if they continue to move to, you know, a block scheduling like the high school has, that they may have to begin the process of adapting more of their schedule to be like where they're not meeting with the block of teachers that are teaching your son or daughter, but you have that time. I mean, I don't know what the answer is, because I don't know what all the other parents think of the process.
I don't know, if
We have
I,
an admin meeting tomorrow. Let me throw it on the table to folks.
are parents not free to get more time with the teacher to discuss their student? I mean,
You get, well, I mean, I don't remember the high school, but I know going through, when they have open house at the high school, you follow your student's schedule.
Right.
And as you do, that's your opportunity to sign up for your parent-teacher conference.
Right.
And
but
the
couldn't you,
Thursday
if
night
you
goes really
if you
fast.
discover your child is struggling in a class, could you say,
Yes,
can
yes,
we
yes.
meet
Oh,
and
yeah,
make
yeah, yeah.
another
There's
meeting?
never been,
All
I
right.
don't think there's ever been a
Right.
case when somebody said, can I come and talk to you on Thursday, next Thursday, and the teacher says no.
I can't imagine myself going in, finding my student is struggling, and I wouldn't follow up on it somehow.
Could we hear from a random person in the audience? Someone maybe who's a Bruins fan?
If your child is struggling at the middle school, we've already reached out. We've actually already blocked off more than 10 minutes so that we have the time we need to address those students really truly in need, that need that intervention from us. So before the parents get it, we've actually already said to Ms. Finnegan, we want this, 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 and this, and this. We've put these parents in there. And we've already designated certain times in there.
Okay, so they're being proactive.
Anytime
Good.
a parent calls teachers, yes, we're gonna make time. In November, it is very difficult because you'll find teachers after school doing like 1 or 2 hours of conferences every night in order to accommodate 100+ students. And we do get a boatload of students. It's amazing. It's a good problem.
It is a good problem, actually, considering what you just related there with the
Well,
teacher
I
that
do
got
remember
sick.
that at LMS last year, that they actually, I think you scheduled them into the next week for some
further.
parents.
Oh,
that.
we scheduled
Further
them this year. I mean, they went into the next month.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
We got to Christmas vacation, and that happens every year. And that's what people don't realize is that for like the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, there's so many of them that they are actually scheduled into like December, and in some cases right up into January. And that's because that's the time that they have to do it.
To do, yeah. That happened to my daughter last year. As a matter of fact, she was on a waiting list, and then they called and said, okay, we can do it like this in days, which was way beyond what the schedule time was.
And the other factor is parents are busy as heck too.
Yeah,
So finding times, and teachers are busy, and, you know.
yeah, it's juggling schedules around. All right.
So, if you have any other questions, concerns between now and next meeting?
So has there been any, I know there was some discussion last year, has there been any movement toward a 1-week vacation in the spring?
There's, South Central superintendents have had a group that's been working on that, trying to find a calendar, but quite honestly, because we have so many CTE kids tied into Hudson and Nashua, I don't go, because in the end, we have to pretty much do what they do, or it really messes up those kids. I mean, the
No, I understand, I
rationale-
wasn't sure if there was any momentum beyond, I know there was 1 or 2 schools that changed to it last year.
Manchester's
funny because the
been
con-
adamant about wanting to make the change.
The conversation morphed from a 1-week vacation to longer school days resulting in earlier end of the
I
school
guess
year.
it's the same thing.
Yeah. Well, no, but they kept the weekend in February, and they kept the weekend in April.
Well, but I'm saying the 1 week would shorten you up in June, because you discover when you get to high school that, you know, if you end on the 24th of June and your child's involved in extracurricular, particularly sports, it starts the first week in August. So you have 5 weeks of whatever you want to do in the summer, you got to do in 5 weeks.
That's without snow days.
Yeah, Mr. 4th of July this year.
And I know there are some people outside of Litchfield that are advocating for a longer spring sports season, but are running into well, we don't want to go beyond the end of the school year.
The biggest problem with changing vacation is that a lot of people have timeshares locked in 2 weeks, and
Heaven forbid we upset the timeshares out of New Hampshire.
I'm sure they can trade.
Well, I mean, I think it, you know, I don't think it's one of the, I do not believe that this is one of the trails that Litchfield should pioneer first.
No, I'm just
Just a
asking, I know we
simple thing,
talked
but
about it, if
but I-
there was any movement.
no.
As soon as one of the Voc Ed places goes,
Then
everybody's
everybody's
gonna
gonna
have to
go.
go. But if they don't ever
Well,
go, then you're stuck.
Manchester is moving to a shorter week. Mark's concern in Nashua is that the research shows that for struggling students, a longer summer break means more loss over the summer, which is why we're mandated to offer extended school year for a lot of special education students and Title I students to try and make up for that 8 weeks of no education. If it now becomes 9 weeks of no education or 10 weeks of no education, then what we know is that kids of affluent parents, those kids are reading and having conversations and doing things, and other kids are not. And so
I think we got something in our email where in some instances, they're actually looking for fuller school year, but shorter breaks. So, you know, around Christmas, it's a three-week break, you know, 2 weeks in December and the beginning of January. But because the students don't lose as much information, so, you know, you know, it's a 5-week or no more than a 6-week break in between July and that, but there's, you know, Thanksgiving is a whole week off or something like that. But it you know, that is the mindset, and it's a, you know, it's something that's out there. I don't think anybody has the right answer or wrong answer.
there's no consensus at this point in time. As I said, the conversation was supposed to, was announced as going in this direction, and it's took a hard term.
It's always tough to change
Well,
that. They've talked about doing that for decades.
There are other areas of the country that do it successfully, and pretty much every college does it successfully.
Yes.
I think
That's
the
'cause they just
Northeast
make a
is.
decision and go.
The Northeast, I think, is pretty unique in terms of had the 2 1-week breaks.
Yeah, it is, because
The
you
rest of
don't
the
see it in the
country.
South.
Most, I mean, I came from Pennsylvania where it was, you got 1 week and it was in mid-March. It kind of broke up the middle, because you kind of go from February to May without a holiday. And they kind of did it mid to late March to
Yeah.
break up that string.
I mean, everywhere else, it's March break.
Yes.
You could actually almost call it spring break, most years.
Yeah,
Maybe not this year.
Not this year.
Yeah.
It'll be less snow break.
All right, so are we moving on? We done with
Yep.
that?
You're in charge, Trish. If you want to move on.
I
move
know,
on.
I mean, you guys got me behind
like 6
schedule, I'm
minutes
losing
behind.
my
You
Could have
touch
moved on
here.
anytime you wanted to.
I'll add it to the agenda for tomorrow's admin meeting and get back to you on that. If you have any additional questions or things you want Michelle and I to research, please let us know.
Okay.
And we'll put it back on the agenda for a vote for the 19th.
All right,
But if-
Okay.
But if the existing board member wants some input, now would be the time.
no, I'm all done.
Trish wants to move on.
You're 6
We're-
minutes
I'm
late.
behind schedule here, I promised these guys to be on schedule. We're moving on to manifest. Any questions?
You got 3?
I have none.
You have none? I hope you don't have any.
I got my
Okay,
answers.
and now we're back to public input. Nobody? No takers? Okay,
We're trying to help you out.
all right. Well, see, now I did pretty well then, because we just
just caught
blasted
up.
through that. So, all right, so we're going on to non-public session. I need to read this whole thing. RSA, A, semicolon, 3, instead of 1, 1. The dismissal, promotion, or compensation of any public employee, or the disciplining of such employee, or the investigation of any charges against him, unless the employee affected has a right to a meeting and requests that the meeting be open, in which case the request shall be granted. The hiring of any person as a public employee, matters which, if discussed in public, would likely affect adversely the reputation of any person other than the member of the body or agency itself, unless such person requests an open meeting.
So maybe.
So, okay.
Second.
All those, is that an all those in favor?
Oh, you gotta,
I gotta ask. Brian?
Yes.
yes.
John? Dennis?
Absolutely.
Yes. All right.
Don't ask me.